Hi, Glenys.
Hey, Aaron. What do you want to talk about today?
How much I hate diets.
Yeah, diets suck.
So what do you do instead of a diet?
Intuitive eating. Health at every size.
So how many times have you had to explain intuitive eating and health at every size to someone?
Like 5,000 times. But that was just to my doctor.
Okay, so how many times have you explained it to someone and then they said, but diets are the only thing I know?
That's like every time. Can we pursue health without thinking about weight?
Yes, we can pursue health without thinking about weight.
That's pretty revolutionary, what you just said. But what if you just don't like yourself at the size that you're at?
I think we need to understand why, instead of just saying I need to change.
So, what's the deal with body positivity?
Oh man, that's a long answer. I'm Aaron Flores.
And I'm Glenys Oyston. And we are Dietitians Unplugged.
Hey everybody, before we get started on this episode, I just wanted to give a quick trigger warning or content warning to folks listening. We're going to be answering a listener email that we got. There's some references to obesity and larger body size, and if we're promoting obesity for someone like Tess Holliday. So if that's something that is a little bit challenging for you to listen to, you might want to skip this episode. But if not, we encourage you to take a listen. And we just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. Thanks. All right. Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of Dietitians Unplugged. How you doing, Glenys?
I am doing very well, Aaron. How are you?
Oh man, I'm tired. I conferenced my butt out the past few days at IADEP, which is the International Association of Eating Disorder Professionals, something like that.
Yeah, you're not the first person that said they struggled with that. What that stands for, yeah.
But it was awesome. We got to meet a lot of folks. And let me just tell you, Glenys, you got to come to some of these conferences because everywhere I go, people are like, oh my God, I love your podcast. Where's Glenys? I love your podcast. Where's Glenys? Is Glenys here?
Sorry.
Where's Glenys? So everyone wants to hang out with you, Glenys. I think I'm just a vehicle for your greatness.
If I showed up and you weren't there, it'd be the same thing. Where's Aaron? Where's Aaron?
I don't know.
We are not Siamese twins.
I don't know. They might get that. I think they're sick of me. I think they're ready for some Glenys. So I'm just putting it out there.
I'm gonna fight my introvert nature and get myself out there. No, but one of the reasons I didn't go this year is simply a matter of time. And I'm doing a lot of personal traveling this year, and it's like, it fell right across my job that I have to take time off. So I was like, do I do this or do I go to Alaska this year? And Alaska won out. So
listen, it's a good choice. It was a good choice for sure. It was nice to connect with so many folks, and there were a lot of professionals there that are also listeners to the show. So thanks everyone for supporting our show, and it was really nice to just share some conversations with folks that were really meaningful and thought provoking, and there were some good talks as well that also sort of helped really further some of the work that we're doing. So it was worthwhile. But I'm definitely like extroverted out. I need I need to go into the cone of silence for a few hours, days, and just recoup.
Yeah, I was having a lot of FOMO on the Facebook posts that were coming up, and I was like, I'm not there. I'm just working here. So, but I got to figure out where I'm going to go next, which conference I'm going to go to. So, that's definitely on the agenda for next year.
Cool. Yeah, because I think when you go, I think we're going to arrange like a live recording when we're there, because I think people would totally get a kick out of that.
Fun. So today we are talking about Today, we are going to talk about a reader question that we got about. This is how I sum this question up. How big is too big before you stop practicing health at every size? I think that's sort of the essence of the question. We'll read the question. I could be off, but
yeah, sure.
Yeah, so we get reader questions at our email address, which is dietitiansunplugged@gmail.com. And this is something that somebody sent a little while ago. It was after we did a podcast talking about Tess Holliday on the cover of it was Cosmopolitan. Yeah, like UK Cosmo or something. So I'll just read the question.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, I just listened to Dietitians Unplugged episode about Tess Holliday. Can you explain to me your feelings around obesity in a little more context? I am confused with what you actually promote around being very overweight. I do understand intuitive eating. And let me know, I'm not commenting on Tess Holliday specifically or her being on the cover of a magazine. I'm talking about obesity in general. In your opinion, obesity is not bad? How can you support that opinion if obesity is linked to an endless number of medical conditions? I see how one can be overweight but still healthy, just as someone can be skinny and unhealthy. But at a certain point in time, if you are so overweight that you are declared obese, then you have fat crushing your major organs. You are shortening your life and setting yourself up for a difficult aging process. How can someone with that amount of excess weight still be healthy? And I stumbled through the last sentence just because I'm like, what? Every time I read that, I'm like, okay. You sent this question to me and I was just like, oh, sounds like a troll at first. But it might be a real genuine question. And I think that there are people out there who ask this a lot. Essentially, they're saying, when do we stop with the health at every size and say, hey, you're too big, you need to go on a diet? That's how I read this. How about you? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's that part, but I also see this part as like, how can you, health at every size is okay for almost everyone, but not really if you're in a larger body like someone like Tess Holliday. And I think it's like, you can do health at every size up to a certain point, but then you need to really think about what is, according to this reader, right? What is the mm-hmm. What is the medical risk that you're going to have? And I also sort of would put this under like the idea of like, you're sort of irresponsible for promoting health at every size. And, I think, listen, this is a valid question. It's a question I actually sort of had to debate with someone who's really a prominent eating disorder researcher, who's a psychiatrist who's been in the field for, 30 some years. And like, we were at lunch together and debating this exact topic. So it's something that comes up, and I think it's something that we do need to answer.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. That's really interesting that you had a conversation with somebody like a professional. So I take it back. This is clearly not a troll question. This is, people new to this world want to know, like, is there a size limit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you convince this person?
Oh, it's a great question. No, I don't think I did. I mean, I think maybe I cracked the door a little bit, and maybe, had them think a little bit. And let me just say, like, it was not a contentious debate. I mean, it was a very civil conversation, and it was long. It was about an hour and a half. I think I soiled my pants during a lot of it, no doubt, because there's definitely like this. Not to get into like my own stuff, but like there's definitely like this like different level of like, I'm not on the same level as that person. Like, my inner critic is like, oh, this is a psychiatrist with years of experience and published X amount of research, and here I am, just a lowly dietitian trying to convince this person of the medical science and health at every size. And the thing, I'll be honest, like I say this to my clients all the time. I had to say it to myself in that moment. Is this quote from Brene Brown? Is don't shrink, don't puff, stand your sacred ground. And I stood my ground, and was respectful, but I was also like, This is where I see flaws in that idea or way of like sort of approaching health at every size. That like it's like, yeah, but like but what about this obesity? Like what about this? How are we going to deal with that? So it was interesting for sure.
Well, I commend you for not shrinking, not puffing, and just standing your ground, because that's a really hard thing to do when you're with somebody who is, like you said, that person's on a different level to some degree in terms of like how much research they've done and, academic accolades and whatever else, so that can be really intimidating.
Sure. Yeah. But let's get back to the question, right? Because I think it's, it's sort of, so here's, in short, here's how I answer the doctor. Here's how I would answer our listener who asked us this question. Is the problem we're falling into is that we're looking at all the science around weight and chronic health, and we're zooming in to really just look at one factor, and we're assuming that weight is the only factor that's going to affect someone's health, and that's just missing the mark. We're missing so many other things that are going to be a part of this equation. And so could there be a correlation? Absolutely, but is there causation? I don't think we can assume causation just because of correlation. And so what I ask people to really think about is a couple things. Is what are when we look at health risks and chronic health and all these things that we're worried about, is one is what's the factor of weight cycling in these equations? What is the factor of trauma, and weight stigma as trauma over a long, prolonged periods? What's the effect of trauma on chronic health? What's the effect of genetics? What's the effect of socioeconomic status, race, gender, all these other things that play into someone's health? And in addition to all of that is, we still need to remember that when we focus on interventions that are solely on weight, 95% of the time they fail.
Right.
And so by zooming out and looking at all these factors, we can really think about, hey, what things do we need to change in our society that makes health more accessible to people in all sorts of bodies? Instead of just saying, oh, you need to conform to this one body size. When in reality, we're going to be in a lot of different body sizes, and that's just the reality. And the more we can accept that, the more we can move forward on creating a system that is more accessible to everyone.
Right. Yeah, and that's a great answer. That there's so much more to it than weight, and how much worse are we going to make the problem if this is a problem for somebody by putting them on a diet? And that's what I always come back to with this question, because we all get this question. Even if that particular body size that this person is talking about was bad for somebody, and I'm not saying it is, I'm just like saying, let's pretend it was. We already know that trying to lose weight or focusing on weight, let's put it that way, focusing on moving the number on the scale down doesn't seem to work long term and makes the problem worse. Or let's say potentially increases a person's size, which can be a problem if that's not what that person wanted to happen. That's what's likely to happen in the long run. So how does it change when how does this idea that diets don't work change when somebody gets very large? It doesn't. Yeah. Diets still don't work. It doesn't matter the size of the person. And, the things that we would help a person do if they came to us, we would see, how is your eating relationship? We would work on that. We would say, do you need help with, motivation around exercise. Is that something you want to do? And you can start anywhere. If somebody's so large they can't walk, maybe there are chair exercises that somebody's interested in doing. There's always something that you can do. So to me, there's no size limit on this.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I agree with you 100%. And so with this submission though, when this question, I think it also gets down to the point of like you said, when is too big, and what is too big for human size. And I think it really just butts up against our own weight bias and fat phobia that like you can be of a certain size, but once you passed some threshold, it's no longer acceptable. And I think that is more about our own internalized weight bias and fat phobia in society than about concern over that person. It's really not about health. It's about our own. It's our own bias.
Yes, absolutely. So this person is throwing around terms like obesity, and this is where we have to talk about obesity as a category is kind of a made up category just based on a specific number on the BMI scale, which changed 20 years ago anyway. Like obesity was a different number before they lowered it. So you can see how arbitrary that is, number one. Number two, when you start to look at the sizes and shapes and weights that the obesity category encompasses, it's probably more than half of the population. So for instance, based on the BMI, I am obese. However, when people look at me, people who are larger than me look at me, they say, you're not even fat. You're like a little bit chubby. Again, sizes can be sort of relative too, right? But really on the existence on the scale of human existence, I'm probably right dead center in the middle, and I'm obese. So we're looking at, this incredibly broad range of human existence. And I know they threw in more categories and all of that to like obese this and obese that and 1, 2, and 3 and all of that. I think they did that when they realized, oh, gee, the BMI makes just about half of the population technically obese in a way. I know it's not, they don't count the numbers that way. They said it's more like a third or something. But so we're looking at so this person's saying obese, and it's like, well, that's me. Would you say that my body is a problem? And with their weight bias coming in, they were like, oh no, you're not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody much bigger. So number one, we have to clarify what this person's talking about. I think this person's talking about somebody on the very far, far end of the BMI scale, right?
Yeah. And listen, I think it's. I know we've touched on this a little bit before, but I think it's important to deconstruct this BMI chart. This BMI thing. It was invented by, his name is Lambert Adolphe Jacques Quetelet. He's Belgian, and it was devised in like the 1830s. And he was he's an astronomer, mathematician. He was a statistician. He wasn't a doctor and wasn't focused on health. It was really just focused on classifying. It was about classifying body size and using an equation to do that.
Right. To compare for epidemiological studies where you can't just compare weight to weight because there's a height factor. So it's just something to equalize everybody's weight. It's for statistical purposes only.
Yeah. And there's the equation is wonky in and of itself. Why there's this factor of 703 is involved. Who knows? But anyway,
it probably just gives you like a really nice, easy number to work with, like 18 to 40 or whatever. Yeah.
Right. But still, I mean, it's wonky. Anyways, we're using something that has now become a predictor of health, and almost like an assumption of your health that is from the 1830s, and really like. I sort of mentioned this in my discussion with this doctor over the weekend, and I was like, what are we using in medical science today that we are using that we were using in the 1830s or 1850s? And their response was listening to the heart. I'm like, well, that seems like a good one. that's a good one to keep. But do we really need this like as a holdover for like, over 150, almost 200 years now? It's a tool that is really no longer needed. It's really no longer useful. And we need to reevaluate why we even use this as a statistical tool in our work.
Right. Well, again, like it's statistically, it might be a useful tool still, but it was never meant as a diagnostic tool. And that somehow we have decided that this is a nice shortcut for doctors or whoever to take when talking about health or whatever is it that they want to sort of talk about or improve. And I understand that, of course there are correlations between weight and health, for sure. But like you said earlier, causation isn't proven in either direction. So yeah, it's this really old-fashioned statistical tool that's been co-opted by the medical community to use as a diagnostic tool. And it's been influenced by individuals that have ties to the diet industry. When they did that in the late 90s, they reevaluated it with, I think it was the International Obesity Task Force, and evaluated what levels should be what, and they all moved them down, despite the evidence that they should actually move them up, that health actually does well at a slightly higher weight. It's been influenced by people. It's just such a crappy tool for diagnosis.
Absolutely. And so, I think that's one reason why, because of how it pathologizes and assumes health, I don't use the word obesity. I mean, this, I choose not to use it. I don't think it should be used. I don't think it is a useful term. And I challenge people to find other words that are going to be less pathologizing of people's bodies. It's not helpful. It creates more stigma than is helpful.
Right. And it comes back to, well, if fat is such a horrible word to say that you have to find another more horrible word to say, it's sort of like, I think the problem isn't the word, it's the stigma behind it. And it's like, let's just bring fat back as a descriptor of a body size, and we can take the sneering tone out of it that people have often used it with. Yeah, but I prefer much more direct descriptions of body size if we must describe body size.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that, because of just how that word is medicalized, obesity is like, I say like, let's get rid of it. We don't need it.
Yeah. Now, what I think this person's talking about, because I wanted to talk about that because I think different terms are being tossed around here, or different ideas. So this person says obese, but again, I'm obese and I'm a relatively small person. Just the way the BMI calculates me, I happen to fall into the obese category now. And let me tell you, it was not very many pounds between obese and normal for me. Normal category. Again, I'm using air quotes, but based on BMI, there weren't very many pounds in between there for me to go from one to the other. So that shows you sort of how arbitrary it is too. But I think what this person would say, if we were talking to them, I think she would say, you know what I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about very, very large people. Or maybe somebody who's large enough that they can't walk. Although I often think that if somebody's that large and they can't walk, there might also be other illnesses going on. There could be injury, whatever. But they're talking about a very large person. They're talking about a very small minority of the population. So they're talking about, first of all, a tiny minority of people that might be this large. Now, they're also saying having fat crushing your major organisms. Yeah, that's what they said. I don't think that actually happens. Do you? I mean, have you heard of that at all? Or
I think they're trying to say organs.
Yes, organs. I also don't know that I think that would be so rare as to be really like, why are we even talking about it kind of thing?
Yeah. I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's no evidence. I guess what I'm saying is there's no real evidence to show that happens for very many people. If any. I guess I've never heard of that happening.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm just like playing with thoughts in my head, and I don't have anything to say to that one.
Yeah. I just think I just think that this person might be imagining things that they're maybe not happening. At least if they're happening, not very often. So I think, again, that comes down to weight bias. Like, this person's very scared of a very large person, and somehow that large body is doing damage to themselves.
Yeah. I think the also part that they're sort of asking is, is it not as so much as when is someone too big for health at every size, or are they too big? But I think it's also like, are you promoting them? Like, are you like, is it ethical to sort of promote someone like Tess Holliday doing what she's doing? And are we sending the wrong message that are we ignoring sort of the I think the question is, are you ignoring all this medical information and then promoting a lifestyle that is truly unhealthy? I think that's the crux of this. And my yes. answer is no. we are. This is not wrong what we're doing. We are not. It's like we're looking at. We are promoting someone who is actually standing up to our weight bias and sort of saying, listen, I can be a cover model at this size. I can be a hiker at this size. I can be a dancer at this size. I can be a politician at this size. I can, the medical risks that we are assuming are not always there. And again, they're not based solely on weight. So, should we promote people of all different size bodies doing all different sorts of things? Absolutely. And what I'm going to ask the listeners to think about is this, is if you butt up against that, if you like sort of say, whoa, that challenges my assumptions, right? Or that makes me feel really uncomfortable. My answer is good. That means there's some growth that can happen. And so I'm going to encourage you to really like sit with that discomfort, and maybe listen, right? Censor the voices around people in those bodies that you find sort of challenging, and hear their lived experience. And that's why people like Tess Holliday, like Jess Baker, like Virgie Tovar, like Reagan Chastain, on and on and on, are so helpful and important to our community, because they're actually lending a voice to the experience that people have in those bodies.
Right. And I think, too, the word promote here is interesting to me. So this person said, I'm confused with what you actually promote around being very overweight. One, we're not promoting a particular body size. What we're promoting is acceptance of the body that you have size-wise, right? Like, that's a very different thing. We're not saying you should all be overweight or, very large. Or that we're not promoting any particular body size, and we're not denigrating any particular body size. What we're promoting is a good life at whatever weight you're at, mm-hmm. right? And as much as you can do towards health, as much as you're able to do towards health at whatever weight that you're at. So we're not promoting a body size, one particular body size. Two, I think this person might be confusing the difference between fat activism and health at every size. So those are two different things. Fat activism does not have to comprise any sort of health initiative. It just is. It's a civil rights issue. Health at every size does include fat activism. So when we're talking about Tess Holliday on the cover, and it's just great to see size diversity, that's the fat activism part. We don't care what her health is. That's not our business. What we're talking about is representation. That's the fat activism part. That's the sort of civil rights type part of it. When we're talking about health, we're talking about things that you can do, and not specifically about a body size. I hope that made sense what I just said.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think to me, I feel like they're very interwoven. Like those are I do see them sort of on some level of the same part, just because they get woven in so much together for me.
Right. For me, understanding finally that the fat activism part was separate from the health part was very helpful. That's talking about, hey, we as people have we need access to the things that everybody has access to: good health care, chairs that fit, the ability to get on an airplane and not be stressed out about whether I'm going to fit in the seat or not. Those are sort of the rights part of it. And those aren't dependent on whether you're practicing any sort of health behaviors, right? So we don't deny people who smoke anything in society other than, I guess, the ability to smoke inside for most places. But their capacity to be treated with respect as a human isn't dependent on whether they smoke or not. That might not be a great comparison, because I'm not saying that choosing to be a certain size is within our control. But I guess what I'm saying is there's an idea of like, oh, is somebody being healthy or not? We can see that, well, smoking is probably not healthy for the most part. And we still allow people to have full access to society. I hope that also made sense. But what I guess I'm saying is one's rights as a human are not dependent on whether somebody is practicing any sort of health behavior. And that is what I think we were sort of talking about with the Tess Holiday on the cover of the magazine. Is this, we just want representation. You know, we as humans of all sizes deserve representation. It doesn't matter what kind of health thing they're doing.
For sure. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that person just sort of stumbled on that. And so I think it is really important to understand that those are two different things, that fat rights isn't dependent on practicing health. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
So conclusion. No. Yeah. So I think the answer to this is no, there's no limit to somebody's weight in terms of practicing health at every size. Because one, I think that doing another diet would be damaging.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Because in the end, dieting doesn't work, right? I mean, like, again, it's no matter how we want to get around this, right? As soon as we get to the point of like, oh, but they got to lose weight. Okay, well, here we go. Like, we're working on an intervention that for the vast majority of people is not going to work. So let's figure out something else.
Right. And I would want to know, like, hey, has this person tried that before and maybe it didn't work? A lot of the times that is the case. So if it didn't work the first 10 times, how is it going to work, time number 11?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, send us questions. We this one was sent way back. We'll get to them. It might take us a while, but we'll get to them.
If they're a really good one, yeah. We'll do it.
Yeah. So, I think it lends to a very important discussion. And again, I appreciate that someone did take the time to sort of ask something that is worthy of good conversation.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to denigrate this person. Like, for asking the question, because I think it is a really important question that lots and lots of people ask. And it's funny because you and I are so in it at this point. I think you described it to the last group we talked to as like, wow, we drank the Kool-Aid, which sounds like a bad thing actually. So but yeah, we're so fully sort of ensconced in the HAES world that sometimes when you hear a question like this, oh yeah, people still have questions about this. So I think it's really important that people ask them and that we can talk about them. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think we sort of answered it well. I'm pleased with what we've sort of said. And so, we'll look forward to the next question because, we want to do more episodes like this where we get to sort of dive deeper into some of these topics. So keep sending your questions and we'll be sure and take time to answer them. All right. Thanks everyone for listening and stay tuned. There's another episode coming very shortly.